my drag link right here got bent the last time I went out, and my tie rod right here was bent a few times in past wheeling trips. So we're gonna be fixing that stuff. We got some new components we're gonna be slapping under there. Hey there everyone, this is Victor with Victor Vector JKU, and today we are in the midst of the axle swap. I am swapping in my Pro-Rock Dana 44 front end and my matching geared and locked Sport Dana 44 rear end. What I'm going to be covering in this video with you guys is my little steering upgrade. So what did I go with? So you can see a couple of boxes right here along with my new steering stabilizer. So I'll start off with that real quick. So I just got a JKS J-Spec steering stabilizer. I just wanted something that was neutral that would dampen the steering feedback. But what I went for with my drag link and tie rod, I went with Fusion 4x4's 2.5 ton steering system, which includes their drag link and their new tie rod. And I already opened these boxes up briefly. One thing I gotta say, what's great about it is the very detail-oriented packaging that they went through. Everything has a little cutout for it. It's well organized inside. And everything is protected very nicely, which is great to see. Now, one thing that's also great about Fusion 4x4, it's made in the USA. And the other thing that's really great is they have an amazing warranty on most all their products. So anything that is not a serviceable product, they will warranty. So the tie rod ends, the drag link end, and the aluminum 2.5 ton steering drag link and tie rod. The only thing that they won't warranty is going to be the ball joints that get assembled into the rod ends. But that's totally okay. They're easily replaceable, and you can see here that the rod end has a threaded portion that you can install your ball joints into. So I was tossing around a few different companies. I put a little thing on Instagram asking what everyone else's opinions were of a few different companies, what they recommended for a new tie rod and drag link. And ultimately I came up with talking to a few different of those companies, and I decided to settle on Fusion. It's a bit more expensive, but I'm pretty rough on my Jeep, and the way that that old tie rod and drag link were bent up, I didn't want to deal with that again. And since I'm upgrading to the Pro-Rock 44 and I have the reed knuckles, I wanted to just go and do the right thing the first time and not have to invest a second time upgrading again. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the preliminary setup here. So basically, when you first set up your new drag link and tie rod, what you would do is you would actually pre-measure your existing tie rod and drag link and set the lengths close to that, and then you could do a minor adjustment afterwards. Now, obviously, I have a new axle. I don't have that currently installed, so I have to figure out a way to do this. So what I'm using is my Bleepin' Jeep tools here, and I have them mounted, and I have them pointed as close to forward as I can get them. So right now, where I'm sitting is, well, I already took the measurement, but basically I was sitting just over 68.5, and this one was just about 68 5/8. So I was just about 1/8 of an inch toe in, and that's gonna get me close enough. What I then did was I took my tape measure, and I measured from the center line of the tie rod hole on this side to the center line on that side, and I came up with 58.5 inches. So with that, I then know that I want to initially set up my tie rod length to 58.5 inches. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and tear into the instructions here and see what we got to do next. Alright guys, so I got the tie rod assembly laid out on the table right now. So let me just run through really quick what comes with it. So they first give you installation instructions that cover both the drag link and the tie rod, which is really nice. It covers all the torques, assembly process and everything, so it takes all the guesswork out for you. So I'm going to be following that while I walk through with you guys how to do this. You got your two tie rod ends. You have your 1 3/4 inch tie rod aluminum. This thing is massive. You also get your jam nuts, you get some washers, and then you have your two ball joints. It comes with two one-piece lockout washers, and these will actually replace the boots that come as part of the assembly in the ball joint. They provide you with a tube of anti-seize in both kits. So that covers everything that was provided. So let's go ahead and jump into the assembly. So first off, what we're going to do is we need to get our tie rod out of its protective sleeve. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be threading on our jam nuts onto the tie rod ends first. And this is going to be the same assembly process for the drag link as well. And then you're going to have a right hand and a left hand, and so you need to make sure you put the correct one on, otherwise it will not thread on. That way you can adjust it without having to take one of the ends off of the knuckle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off, I'm going to throw that guy down nice and deep onto this. Next thing that we're going to have is we're going to have the washer go on to the end. We're going to repeat this on the other side as well. Alright, and then again, we'll put our washer on. Okay, next thing what we're going to do is we're going to be applying some of our anti-seize onto the threads here, and we're going to then thread it into our tie rod bar. Now the trick is to do this without getting anti-seize all over yourself, which I've already failed at. And recall that these guys are going to be going on in different directions. So one's going to thread on one side one direction, and the other one will thread on the opposite. But so the anti-seize is going to prevent having issues when you go to ever adjust this. Aluminum will want to gall up on the tie rod end, and that will cause issues for you down the road. And we'll go ahead and start on the other side too. Alright, so now with those guys both started, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and pull a measurement really quick. And I'm going to see what my distance from center to center is, and I'm going to get that set to approximately 58.5 inches. So right now I'm about 61.25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to even up my threads and make sure that I'm about equal distance of thread showing on both sides. And that is pretty close to 58.5 right there, and I have about 3/4 of an inch of thread showing on either side to the jam nut, which is threaded out to the end of the threads. So I think we are pretty good there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go ahead and tighten in my jam nuts a little bit just to keep them from moving on me. Alright, so for the next step on the tie rod assembly, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing the ball joints. So basically what we are supplied with here is our ball joint. Comes with a dust cover boot. This will not be used for the tie rod. What we're going to be doing is installing these lockout washers instead, and those will be going in place of the boots. Then it also comes with our nylock nut that's going to be used to fasten the tie rod ball joint to the knuckle. You have your little spring that will hold the boot on, and you also have a zerk fitting. So I'm not going to worry about these two guys for now. I'm going to leave them in the bag. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing the ball joints to the tie rod ends.
You need a 2-inch 6-point socket.
And then you're also going to need a torque wrench that's able to torque up to 135 pounds. And I'll leave a link to where I picked up these sockets off of Amazon. So what I'm going to do to start off with is first I'm going to clean the threads of both the ball joints and the tie rod outers before I install these, because we do need to apply blue Loctite onto the threads. So what I'm going to be doing is using just a grease and wax remover and a blue shop towel. Alright, so now with that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit of blue Loctite to the threads of my ball joint. Alright, so I have my ball joint in place. Next I'm going to be doing is tightening him in to 135 foot-pounds. Alright, there we go. That was actually pretty easy. I was expecting a little bit more of a struggle, so that's nice. Alright, and then we'll just repeat the other side. So that is everything for installing the ball joints onto the tie rod. So we'll go ahead and repeat that again for the drag link. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to install our lockout washers. And these guys are pretty simple. These guys are just going to pop right on over the bottom of the ball joint where the thread is coming up out. So nice and easy. Just go ahead and place it straight on like that. Do the same on the other side. So now the only thing that's left to do with this guy is install the Zerk fittings on the tie rod. But I'm going to wait until I have it on the Jeep to do that. Once I've got my alignment set, I'll go ahead and install those and I'll make sure that they're topped off with grease. Alright, so I just wanted to show really quick as a visual representation of what the drag link is going to be looking like when I install it. So you can see that the side that's going to be going to the pitman arm here on my right hand, this guy is facing upwards, whereas the side that's going to go to the knuckle on my left hand here is facing downwards. That's because the reed knuckles are set up for a drag link flip. Now one other thing I want to mention, so the ball joints do come with this double ribbed boot. We're going to be replacing that and the spring that came with it for this single boot that was supplied in the kit. We're going to be putting the spring and the boot on this next. So what we'll first do is we'll go ahead and put our boot into place, get him over the lip on the ball joint, and then we'll install the spring over that. Okay, so the trick with these little springs is you kind of want to just sort of pull it apart a little bit, starting from the one side and work around in a circle and slowly pushing down, and it'll eventually slip right over the top of the boot and land into place. So this is how it will finish up looking. Just like that. All right, so that wraps up everything that I got to do over here on the table. Next thing what we're going to do is go ahead and locate underneath the Jeep and throw these guys into place. All right guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with installing the drag link first. So that's going to be connected from the pitman arm to the passenger side knuckle. The reason why I'm doing this is because on the reed knuckle, I'm not sure where exactly the tie rod is going to be below where the drag link mounts, so I'm going to have to be tightening on a nut from below here, and the tie rod might be kind of in the way a little bit there, so I want to first make sure, at least for socket clearance and tool clearance, that I have the drag link in first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring the tie rod up into place, and I have my nylock nut here. I'm going to go ahead and slip him into place onto the drag link, and I'm just going to go ahead and start him a little bit so he'll hold himself up into place. Alright, with that guy started, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the knuckle. I'm going to go ahead and drop him down into place and start this nut as well. Alright, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start tightening these guys in, and what I'm going to be doing is 63 foot-pounds on the knuckle side, and I'm going to be doing 77 foot-pounds on the pitman arm side. And to help out with this, I'm going to go ahead and rotate my steering out a little bit to give me a little bit more clearance to the nut up here. go. Now we're ready to bring in our tie rod. Alright, so again, I'm going to go ahead and start the nut on one side. Get him up into place and start the nut on one side. And I'll move on to the other side once I get this guy going. Alright, there we go. Now let's go and tighten these guys down. Alright, then we'll come through and torque them down to 63 foot-pounds. Alright, so the one thing I wanted to highlight with the tool clearance I was mentioning earlier, so there is clearance to be able to get in here, but I don't know if a socket wrench would have been able to fit around this very easily to tighten this, so it was easier to install that first, and there's plenty of clearance to get to this tie rod bolt afterwards. So definitely think that that was the right way to go, put it on the drag link first and then the tie rod. But yeah, so we have the steering now installed, everything is torqued. Last thing to do here, or two more things to do here, is set my alignment. So one's going to be the steering wheel angle by adjusting the drag link, and then the second will be my toe with the tie rod. So I'm going to be using my Bleep and Jeep tools that you can see I already have installed, and I'm going to be checking to see how close I am and then make the adjustments necessary. Then to finish up after that, I should need to install my steering stabilizer to my tie rod and back to the track bar relocation bracket. Alright, so you guys can see I have my Bleep and Jeep tool set up here, and I have two tape measures running front and back. First thing that I do is I'll first set my level approximate on both sides, so it's as level as possible. And then the next step that you do is you go ahead and look at what your front to back measurements are. So right now we're looking right about a 1/16 over 69 inches in the front, and we're looking right about 68 inches in the rear. What that means is that I am toed out about 1 1/16 of an inch. Ideally where we want to be, and it's scribed on the other Bleep and Jeep tool that's on the passenger side, is that we want to be right about 1/16 to 1/32 of an inch shorter of a measurement on the front than the rear, and that gives you a slight toe in, which meets the factory specifications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and adjust my tie rod now to reduce the measurement in the front. So basically I'm going to be shortening the tie rod, and that will also at the same time elongate the measurement in the rear. So being that I'm 1 1/16 of an inch, basically what I want to do is I want to take about a half of that distance out. So I'm going to be looking right about a half of an inch. That is what I need to take out. So I'm going to be looking to get to about 68.5 inches on this front measurement. The rear should be pretty close to that as well. So the first thing to do is make sure your jam nuts are extended out, or at least loosened up. Now, because I'm going to be shortening the length, that means that these rod ends are going to be actually being more consumed into the tie rod bar. So what I just need to then do is figure out the correct direction to rotate this, and I can go ahead and shorten my measurement up. And as I go, I'm going to keep an eye on my measurement here. Alright, and that puts me right at 68.5 inches in the front. And I am at 68 1/16 in the rear. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just back it up just ever so slightly. Okay. So that gets me right where I want to be. So I'm at 68.5 in the front. We'll go ahead and show you this. So you can see I am right at 68 inches in the front, and my rear measurement is right in between 68.5 and 68 9/16. So that's perfect. Now, last thing that I got to do is I'm going to get a little bit of blue Loctite. I'm going to apply that to the threads where these jam nuts are going to go, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten these guys on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and thread these guys out a little bit. I'm just going to apply a little bit of blue Loctite into the threads in between the bar and the nut. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten on my jam nut. And I have a large adjustable crescent wrench that I'm going to be using to tighten these guys in. What's great about these links is they actually have wrench flats. So say down the road you didn't apply enough anti-seize or something galled up or is not moving freely, you actually have these flats that you can put your wrench onto, and you could then actually adjust your toe easier with that. Next up, I just got to adjust my drag link for being centered to the steering wheel. Now, I'm going to do this once I get the wheels and tires mounted and the Jeep back on the ground, because I'll need to verify that the vehicle is driving straight at the same time as making sure the steering wheel is pointed in the same direction as the tires. Alright, so I have my Jeep back down on its tires. I think my tires are pretty straight right now to where the vehicle will track. But the one thing that I have to do is I have to adjust for the steering wheel inside the cab. So right now I'm about a 90-degree turn of the steering wheel to the left. So that means that what I need to do is I need to tighten this so it pulls the pitman arm and steering wheel to the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this a bit, and then I'm going to go into the cab and check and see how that has done. So I'm going to start off with that and go take a look. Alright, I'm pretty close. I only have a little bit more to go to bring it into square. And that honestly looks pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back it off just a touch. And what I'm going to do, now I'm not going to put on blue Loctite yet. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten my jam nuts. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a quick drive, check and see how the alignment of all this looks before I Loctite it all in. And then here, you can kind of see the boot's getting crushed on this side, and it's a little loose on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open this guy up just a little bit, just so he's sitting a little bit more even. And then just to go ahead and show, so you can see that my steering wheel now is straight. So we're good. That'll make sure that I'm not throwing any codes while I'm driving the vehicle. Alright, so I just got back from my drive test, and I pulled my Jeep back into the garage so the tires were pulling me in straight, and you can see that I am just a little bit off center. I'm a little bit far to the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and adjust my drag link out a little bit, and that will go ahead and correct that. And this is the reason why I did not Loctite the drag link earlier. I'm going to go ahead and start off with loosening the jam nuts. Then I'm going to extend my link just a little bit out. Alright, so I got it set where I want. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go ahead and thread out my jam nuts. And I'm going to apply a little bit of Loctite. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten my jam nuts back in. Now, in the process of tightening these back in, before I get them snug, I'm going to make sure that both links are kind of squared up as best as I possibly can get them to their joints. That way, when this guy's tightened in, there'll be less likelihood for the boots to be bound up on and cause any damage to those over time. Go ahead and tighten in our jam nuts. Alright, and there we go. Alright guys, so next up I was going to install the steering stabilizer, but I was looking at some clearances, and so I cycled my tires fully to the right to lock and all the way back left to lock. In the process, I looked at where the steering stabilizer would mount and then where it would align on the tie rod with the bracket that I have here to install either a steering stabilizer or also can be used for a ram assist. Now with this, I would actually run into an interference where I'd hit the front of the diff cover here where the Dynatrac boss and logo is. So I'm going to need to get something other than this to be able to make it work, I think. My plan right now is I'm going to run tomorrow without a steering stabilizer. I should be alright as long as my steering is all set up correctly. Really all a steering stabilizer does is it reduces the on and off road feedback from different things that you're hitting, either cracks in the road, bumps, potholes, or rocks and other obstacles off-road. So I've never had an issue with my steering before. All my alignment and geometry looks good. The key piece here is going to be making sure that the angle between your drag link and the angle between your track bar are as close to parallel as possible, and mine are very, very close. So I may go about how I want to install this in another video based on where I'm going to mount it on the Synergy track bar relocation bracket, and then also what I'm going to be using for a bracket to the tie rod. So that is going to wrap up this video install of the Fusion 4x4 2.5 ton steering system. So that's going to include the drag link and tie rod. And I gotta say, this is some very beefy steering. I'm very excited to see how this is going to perform off-road. That_JKU, he highly recommended them and he liked the performance of them, didn't have any issues. I'm looking forward to see how this turns out, and we'll definitely be letting you guys know after tomorrow's shakedown run. So that's going to wrap up today's video. So if you guys enjoyed it, definitely hit the like button. Leave me any comments or questions in the field below. And help me grow my YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel and share this video out to any friends that are looking into steering upgrades, and hopefully they will find this video useful. With that guys, we are Victor Vector JKU, and we are taking on this build and the trails with both direction and magnitude. Alright guys, have a good one. Catch you next time.